Goetia family is disastrous. Octavia is probably the best member of the Goetia family, and I would even argue she's the most non-douchebag character in Helluva Boss. I know it's hell, I get that, but it really seems almost every character is a dick in some way. However, I'm talking about the Goetia family in this video. This family is disastrous, to say the least. Everyone in this family has prickinitis. We all have flaws, I get that. But everyone in this family bloodline besides Octavia is a scumbag. If you enjoyed these videos, be sure to subscribe. I do Helluvaverse content every single week. Without further delay, let's get right into this subject. This family sucks. I already said it. But why do they suck? First, I think it's best to break down what makes each member a jerk-off. Except Octavia, of course. I asked all of you earlier this week in a poll who is the best, and Octavia won the poll, which is not a shock to anyone, I think. Interestingly enough, however, who voted Stella? Are you nuts? Anyways, let's go over what makes each member of this family fucking terrible. Stella. This one is obvious, but I will break it down for you guys anyway. Stella, I'd argue, is worse than Stolas, since I feel she doesn't get nearly as much hate as Stolas does. She's just as bad of a parent, if not worse. She's verbally abusive to Stolas, screaming at the top of her lungs, so much in fact the voice actress sounds like she needs a drink for days afterward. She abuses her imp butlers, even physically throwing them like a football down to the end zone like she was Tom Brady at Stolas in an attempt to physically assault him. Oh yeah, and all in front of her child, scarring her that much further. She's also very narcissistic, conspiring with her own brother, who's just as bad, to murder Stolas in cold blood by hiring a hitman on him, and even laughs like a supervillain when she keeps Stolas and Octavia apart. Stella very often acts on emotional impulse decisions rather than critical thoughts, which is not a way you should go about it. Stella is emotionally, physically, and verbally abusive. She has no control over her emotions whatsoever, and it makes her a psychopath. Doesn't matter if Stolas is a jerk or not, this is just overkill. Not to mention the mental damage it's doing to Octavia, who is a teen by the way, and is still figuring things out in her life. And for this to be dumped on her isn't fair. So Stella, screw you, F you. You have to be the worst member of this entire Goetia family, point blank. Stolas. Oh god, Stolas. What can I say? Well, the last video I made and I discussed about how Stolas is a terrible father, but I'm not going to recite that too much since I already said it in my last video and why he's a bad member of the family, since if you want to know my thoughts on his parenting, you could just go watch that video after this one. Anyways, Stolas is a hypocrite, straight up, and victimizes himself in him and Blitz's relationship. If you want to call it a relationship, I don't even know what they are at this point. I think it's a fling. I don't even know. Stolas will moan and groan about how Blitz doesn't save him from Stryker, despite him sending Moxie and Millie to help him. Meanwhile, leaves Blitz to get a gun put up to his neck in Murder Family. Claims Blitz looks down on him despite Stolas calling him demeaning nicknames such as Blitzy. Despite Blitz making it pretty obvious he has a distaste for being called this, and he finds it insulting, which it kind of is. It makes Blitz out to be the one who only wants sex in their relationship, even though Stolas is always horning out for Blitzo, even in front of his own child. It makes Blitz very uncomfortable during many instances throughout the show, yet feels a need to paint Blitz as this abusive partner, when sure, Blitz isn't the best, I'm aware, but why should Blitz respect you, Stolas, when you've been showing him the complete opposite of respect up until this point, you bird-brained little prick? As I mentioned in my previous video, he neglects his own daughter, and I'm not talking the Superstar Eminem song. I love that song. Just to horn out for Blitz, and completely disregards Octavia's physical and mental health, and cheats knowing full well it's gonna set Stella off. Pieman. Oh man, what is worse than Stolas? Well, his own father. I gotta stop singing Eminem songs before I get a DMCA freaking lawsuit. Pieman isn't seen very much. Also, you may be wondering, Axel, why are you not showing any footage of episode 2, season 1? The circus episode where Pieman only appears in? I seriously have no idea why this is happening, but whenever I show footage of that episode, I get copyright, not claimed, but they copyright the video and I can't monetize it, and I want to monetize the video, obviously, so I can't really show too much of that episode. I don't even know if I can show screenshots, but if I am, I guess it worked out copyright-wise. But yeah, Pieman is a terrible father, just like Stolas is. This jerk-off neglects his own son. He seems to hate having to be responsible for his own kid. So much, in fact, he couldn't even be bothered to go to the circus with his kid and just being on the mirror like FaceTime iPad or whatever it's called, having an imp go with him instead. Additionally, Paimon forced, yes, I'm using the word forced here instead of arranged, since they are one and the same, forced his son to marry and have a kid with Stella, who, as I went over earlier, is a complete nut job. The first image of her we were shown, chronologically in the storyline, is her choking the life out of someone, showing just how ignorant Paimon is to the safety of Stolas, if he's put into his forced marriage. But he seems that he could care less about the safety of his own flesh and blood. Sounds a lot like another bird I know. Hint, hint. Guess Stolas sure is a chip off the old block, eh? Oh, let's not forget when Paimon introduced his son to Blitz. Biggest mistake of his life, by the way. When Stolas bows to Blitz, just to be kind, he hits his son and even calls him an idiot in saying that Blitz is supposed to bow to them. So he hits his kid, since he has no hesitation to do it here. He must do it often, huh? Also, when he goes to buy Blitz, another imp, dehumanizing an imp, well, they're not really human, but you get my point. Even says he wants to buy him a friend so he doesn't have to deal with him. This man really just said so he doesn't have to deal with his own kid he chose to have. Mind blown. And then there's Octavia. Octavia is literally the only member of this family who isn't a complete and utter prick. She legit does nothing wrong in this show at all. Octavia is just a victim of Stolas and Stella's abuse. She's arguably the one character that deserves any bad things happening to her the least. Unfortunately, Octavia does not get a ton of screen time over the 2 seasons. Octavia is supposed to be this edgy teen type of character, but Octavia obviously is depressed since she has to put up with both Stella and Stolas' abuse. She has the most emotional self-control of any of the members of her family, and heck, most characters in Helluva Boss. Despite being a teenager, she's very mature mentally compared to people like her father. Also, in a way, she will bring an end to the Goetia family bloodline. Thankfully, is anyone upset about that? Since most of you may or may not know, Octavia is asexual, meaning she's not sexually or romantically attracted to anyone, meaning she won't have a child anytime soon, and since she has no other siblings, this will mark the end of the bloodline, at least on Stolas' side of the family. Asexual people can want and have kids, of course, nothing's stopping them physically, but it's just way less likely because maybe beyond their interest. And in a way, she puts an end to this awful family bloodline, and somehow is the only member of her family that's actually tolerable and doesn't deserve any of the things she has to go through throughout her life. And to be honest, Octavia is actually personally my favorite character because of just how likable and relatable she can actually be to some people. She's emotionally strong, she doesn't put others down, she stays in her own lane, and seems to have no terrible traits I can think of. She's just a good person, and I know it's hell, and they're supposed to be kind of scumbags. It's just refreshing to have a character in the Hellverse not be a complete jerk. Besides Charlie, but everyone knows she's very nice. But I just wanted to go over this disastrous family that is the Goetias, and it seems that there is hope for that family bloodline, that being in Octavia a member of the bloodline to change the status quo, and ultimately is my favorite character in Helluva Boss. Thanks guys for listening to my little rant about the Goetias. I just don't like how terrible they are, and I'm just happy to have someone like Octavia to actually change the status quo of just how bad that family is. But let me know down in the comments, what's the worst member of the Goetia family and why? Make sure to subscribe, and this is me, Axel, signing off. Catch you guys in the next one.